All right, we're starting another drawing, and first step, tape it down. So I'm going to line my T-square up with the edge of my paper and tape down my corners. Can't get the tape off. Then our next step is to lay out our title block, where'd I put my ruler? Where'd it go? How'd I lose it? That's bizarre. Well, I'll just get another one. All right, now I'm gonna lay out my title block. So I'm just gonna measure in a quarter. And again, I'm gonna do it a little faster, but feel free to pause if you want to follow along to every little thing. You're welcome to. Guideline across, always making sure that I am keeping my T-square flush against the side of my drafting board. And as I do that, always keeping my triangle flat against the T-square. And then for my title block, I'm just going to measure out 4, 3, 2, and then, now I got to do maths. 1.5. I had my ruler backwards, so I had to work out that math in my head. And I'm not a math teacher, kids. All right, I've got my title block laid out. Let me just clean that up. And that too. And now I'm going to start laying out my object itself. So I do have this one again built as a physical piece, so I'll be referring to it a couple of times as we draw it. So I've got my front view, and I'm just going to pick a place towards the bottom left corner, but not on my border itself, and just lay out some guide work. And this time I won't bring it as far, just to kind of show you how you can do some guidelines without having to erase as much. So that's the same as kind of this bottom left corner of my object, and I just want to know what's my overall length and my overall height. So I have an overall length of 6 and an overall height of 2. I'm also going to kind of note though in my head that I've got this little feature here. So just like with our rabbited block where we had 1 level and then 2 levels, this is a similar concept, but this level here just doesn't go all the way across the front face. So there's that little notch in just the corner here. So I'm just going to kind of make a note that it's over 2 inches and down 1 inch in those measurements. So that way I can just measure all of that kind of in one go. So I'm just going to measure over 6 inches, and then I'm also just going to make a little mark at 4, just so I have that without having to measure several times. And then I'll make a mark at 2 and a mark at 1 to give me kind of less times that I have to go in and pick up my ruler and stuff. So I'll bring that guide across, and I'll line up with my 1 inch, and I'll make a guide kind of between where those two marks I made are. And I did purposely bring it a little bit further just so I know that the line would be long enough. And then line up where I made that little 2-inch mark, line up. And the reason why I didn't put it all the way is because I knew that there's nothing here, so that just gives me less stuff that I have to go in and erase. And I have my front view created, and I'll just get rid of some of this guide work, because just like with my miter line technique that I showed in the last video, I can do a very similar thing with guidelines to give me less guide work to have to erase. So now I have the front view created, and I'll move on to the top view. So I'm just going to pick an amount of space. Like I said, I'll usually do about 1 inch or 1.5 inches, but I kind of just eyeball it. I know that's not maybe the best technique, but that's what Miss Miller does. And I'll just put kind of a guide across. And again, I was just kind of eyeballing it to be around the same length as what that is. And then I'll line up my triangle, project a line up my triangle to where that edge is, project a line up my triangle to where the edge is, project a line up. So I'm still using the same technique that those longer guidelines implement, or kind of utilize, I guess, but it's just giving me less stuff to have to erase. Now I'm going to take a measurement of what my overall depth is. So for my overall depth, I have a depth of 3, and while I have my ruler here, I'm also just going to make a little mark at that 2, just because that edge goes in. It has a depth of 1 inch. And so I'll line my T-square up with where I made that mark, line across, line my T-square up, line across, and then just kind of clean up where my edges and my corners are. And this is a technique that you can definitely start to use a lot more when you get much more comfortable with orthographics, and it just gives me so much less work to have to erase. But I've gotten to a point now, as I've mentioned, I've been doing this for longer than some of you watching this have been alive, I'm sure. And I can visualize what the faces are going to look like in the orthographic without really putting them on paper. And that just is something that with practice you will too. Now I'll do my miter line for my side view. So again, the miter line is that 45-degree line that comes from where the topmost and rightmost lines meet. So in this case, that's right here. It is on the object itself. And I'll keep my T-square flat against the board, keep my triangle flat on there, guide line up at 45, and then just kind of note where all of these horizontal lines would meet it. So instead of drawing that line all the way out, I'm just kind of making little notations of where it would hit. There's a little glare, but there's a line there. And then bringing some guides out for here. So if this is going to be my bottom edge here, that means that on my view it's going to be this very left side. So I'll start this line, and I'll just kind of eyeball it where around these two would get projected down. And then taking my T-square, I know that glare from the light's really annoying, but I can't, otherwise you're not going to be able to see. But I'm just going to line that up where it meets, project straight down, line up where it meets, project it down, line up where it meets, project it down, which is when I took the whole line down for some reason. And see, that's why I kind of just prefer to just line it up without having to bring the whole line down, because that just gives me more stuff to have to erase. And so now I have my side view made. I have proper spacing, proper alignment, or even spacing and proper alignment, without having to take any measurements for the side view, because I was able to just project down whatever this measurement is right here, project the whole measurement, project it here using the miter line. Now I'll fill in my title block. So again, this needs to be lettered. Lettering is neat. Lettering is all capitals. Lettering is uniform. In the first block, or the first kind of little notation area thing here, that's just rattling off adjectives at this point, is the block's name. And this one is called the notched block. Then is your name. The date. The scale, which again is a ratio. We did this 1-to-1. 1 inch on paper is 1 inch in real life, or full size. And then how many drawings are in this set? And this is drawing 1 of 1 associated with the notched block.